Good morning and welcome back. Myself, Dr. Gibran Ahmed, presents to you Simply Pathology, and today we are back with HIV Part 2. So, without wasting any time, let us move ahead. So, we are going to discuss what are the mechanisms of T cell depletion in HIV infection. Okay, so you have to understand that the loss of infected CD4 plus T cell is mainly because of the direct cytopathic effect of the replicating virus. So what is the cytopathic effect? So if you remember that I had taught you in the previous class about the life cycle of the HIV virus. So we saw that in the end the virus was replicating inside the host cell, and then it was using the host cell membrane, okay, and then there was budding of the virus. The virus was released in the form of viral budding. So in the process, the plasma membrane was lost and the plasma membrane permeability was also altered. So the virus kills the infected cells by increasing the plasma membrane permeability, which is associated with increased viral budding as well as viral replication, which interferes with the protein synthesis. This is the direct mechanism of T cell depletion. There are several other mechanisms of depletion of the T cell. One is the chronic activation of the uninfected T cells. This can happen either because of HIV itself or because of the infections which are common in HIV. And this is going to lead to apoptosis of the uninfected cells by activation-induced cell death. Now the second thing is the cell death by pyroptosis, which is the inflammasome pathway. Okay, so if you remember, okay, now this particular pathway is not the cytopathic effects of HIV, it is the non-cytopathic effect. So the non-cytopathic, okay, or the abortive HIV infection, it activates the inflammasome pathway and that leads to cell death by pyroptosis. Now this cell death also leads to the release of the inflammatory cytokines and the cellular contents, leading to an increased recruitment of the T cells, that is an increased infection of the T cells, which is followed by further spread of infection. Okay, now HIV also infects the cells in the secondary lymphoid organs, that is the spleen, lymph nodes and the tonsils, and they may cause progressive destruction of the architecture and the cellular composition of the lymphoid tissues. Also, it can lead to loss of immature T cell precursors, okay, or the precursors of the CD4 plus T cells in the thymus. Now, there can also be fusion of the infected with the uninfected T cell to form giant cells, also called as syncytia. And these fused cells, they are going to die within few hours. This property of syncytia formation, which is confined to the T-tropic or the X4 strain of HIV, therefore it is also known as syncytia inducing virus or S1 virus. Okay, now there are many qualitative defects in the T cells even in asymptomatic HIV infected persons. Okay, so what are the qualitative defects? There is a reduced antigen induced T cell proliferation, decreased T helper 1 response, defects in the intracellular signaling, and selective loss of memory T cells. Okay, now because of these things, what is happening? There is a reduced cell mediated immunity that is leading to an increased amount of infections. Now also you have to understand one thing, that always a low level chronic or latent infection of T cells is a very important feature of HIV infection. So as we have read in the life cycle, now once the HIV virus enters the host cell, it is going to replicate with the host DNA to give rise to an integrated provirus. Now usually this provirus, it starts to replicate and it starts to transcribe and translate into viral proteins, and then there is viral budding. Okay, so there is a viral replication over here. But sometimes this process, this integrated provirus, okay, they do not have any viral gene expression. That is called as a latent infection. So these cells, so the virus remains in these cells for several months to years and these cells remain inactive. Okay, so such CD4 plus T cells where the virus is latent, it constitutes 0.05% of the CD4 plus T cells in the lymph node. Okay, and since most of these, they are memory T cells, and as we know, the memory T cells, they are long lived. Okay, their lifespan is approximately months to years, so the infection also remains inside them for a very long period of time, and therefore these memory T cells are also called as the reservoirs of infection. So the latently infected memory T cells, they are serving as a reservoir of infection. Okay, now what are the major abnormalities of the immune function in AIDS? What are the major abnormalities that we see? So number one is your lymphopenia. Okay, this is basically caused predominantly by the death of the CD4 plus helper T cell subset. Secondly, there is a decreased T cell function in vivo, means inside our body the cell function is also altered because of the preferential loss of the activated and the memory T cell. A delayed hypersensitivity reaction is also decreased, and there is a susceptibility to opportunistic infections or malignancies. Okay, now the T cell function is not only altered inside the body, that is in vivo, it is also altered in vitro, that is in the laboratory. And how do we see this? Because there is a decreased proliferative response to the mitogens or antigens, decreased cytotoxicity, decreased interleukin 2 and interferon gamma production, and decreased helper function for the B cell antibody production. So what is happening? We also know that the B cell, it depends on the T cell, helper T cells, for their antibody production. Now because this help is not there, the B cell function is also gone. Okay, now there is a polyclonal B cell activation, which is characterized by hyper gamma globulinemia and circulating immune complex. And although there is a B cell activation and B cell proliferation, but these B cells, they are not able to mount a new antibody response against a new antigen. So poor response to normal B cell activation signals in vitro. So the B cell function is also altered in spite of, polyclonal activation of B cell. They cannot mount an immune response or antibody response. Okay, not only that, the monocyte and macrophage function is also altered, which is characterized by decreased chemotaxis and phagocytosis, decreased class 2 HLA expression, and decreased capacity to present the antigen to the T cell. Okay, so this is all about the major abnormalities of the immune function in AIDS. So the HIV infection is not only confined to the T cells, it can also infect certain non-T cells. Among them, the most important are the macrophages and the dendritic cells. First, we will start with the macrophages. So we know one thing, that although the HIV is infecting and replicating inside the dividing cells, as we read before, that HIV selectively infects the actively dividing T cells. But in this case, in case of macrophages, it can infect and multiply in terminally differentiated non-dividing macrophages. And this property of HIV is dependent on the viral VPR gene. Now remember, the infected macrophages, they are quite resistant to the cytopathic effects of HIV. So if you remember, by cytopathic effects, I mean the viral budding and the viral release. So these infected macrophages, they do not release, or they do not let the virus to bud and release easily. So they are quite resistant to this. But this does not mean that the viral replication inside the cell is not going. No. Okay. Although the budding is very less, okay, but the viral load inside the macrophages are very high. Therefore, in late stages of HIV, when the CD4 plus T cell count is less, in that scenario, the macrophages are acting as a reservoir of infection. Okay, so this is the macrophage, as you see, and you see the viral budding over here is very less as compared to the CD4 plus T cells. But remember, the viral load inside the cell is very high, means the virus is replicating. Okay, and therefore this macrophage, infected macrophage, is serving as a reservoir of infection. Also, one very important thing is, now as you remember, that the M-tropic strains of HIV, they are predominant in the early cases of acute viral infection. That is the R5 strain, also called as M-tropic, because they have affinity for macrophages. Therefore, we can say that macrophages, they act as a portal of infection, as in more than 90% of the cases of acute HIV infection, the infection is by the M-tropic or the R5 strain of HIV virus. Remember, the uninfected macrophages, they also have unexplained functional defects like an impaired microbicidal activity, defective chemotaxis, decreased release of important cytokines like interleukin 1 and TNF, as well as defective antigen presentation. Also, very important point is that the infected macrophages have a major role in the spread of HIV virus, okay, towards the central nervous system, to the CNS. Okay, so infected macrophages, they help the spread of HIV to the CNS. Now, the second important non-T cells are the dendritic cells. There are two kinds of dendritic cells. One of them are present in the mucosa, called as the mucosal dendritic cells, and another one is present basically in the germinal centers, called as the follicular dendritic cells. Now, these mucosal dendritic cells, they have a large number of lectin receptors that can bind with the HIV, and after binding with the HIV, they carry this HIV to the regional lymph node, and they display it to the T cells, the infectious form of the HIV, and therefore it promotes infection of the T cells. The role of follicular dendritic cell is also a bit similar. Now these dendritic cells, they are present in the germinal centers of lymph node and they act as reservoirs of infection. Now how do they spread it to the T cell? Let us see. Remember, any antibody coated HIV, they can bind to the Fc part of the receptors which are present on the follicular dendritic cell. Remember, the Fc part, okay, the basically receptors for the Fc part of the antibody coated HIV is present on the follicular dendritic cells. And with this antibody coated HIV binds to the receptors of the follicular dendritic cell, and these antibody coated HIV, okay, bound to the follicular dendritic cell, they can further infect the CD4 plus T cell. So the dendritic cells basically, the role of dendritic cell is basically that of promotion of infection to the CD4 plus T cells, okay, by antigen presentation. Now what is the role of B cell in HIV? Let us see. Now remember that whenever there is HIV, okay, our body immunity will fall. That is going to cause reactivation of the cytomegalovirus and Epstein-Barr virus infection. This is there. Along with that, the GP41 glycoprotein, and along with that, the release of interleukin 6 from the macrophages in response to HIV infection, okay, or so because of this infection, in response to the HIV infection, these three things, they cause polyclonal B cell activation with proliferation and differentiation of the B cells. So I repeat again, the reactivation of cytomegalovirus or EBV because of reduced immunity in HIV, the HIV glycoprotein 41, as well as the release of interleukin 6 from the macrophages in response to HIV infection, all these three causes a polyclonal B cell activation with proliferation and differentiation of the B cells, okay, which is characterized by germinal center B cell hyperplasia, bone marrow plasmacytosis, hypergammaglobulinemia, and formation of circulatory immune complex. So all these things, okay, the B cell function in the HIV infection, okay, it causes polyclonal B cell activation, okay. Now you have to remember that despite of the presence of spontaneously activated B cells, okay, the patients with AIDS, they are unable to mount an antibody response to the newly encountered antigen. Why is it so? Because the B cell, they cannot act alone. They can act only after they receive some sort of help from the T helper cells, okay. So because of lack of this T cell help, the B cell, they cannot mount antibody response to not only T cell dependent but also to T cell independent antigen. So it cannot mount a antibody response to both T cell dependent as well as T cell independent antigens. So this causes an impaired humoral immunity, which leads to infection by encapsulated bacteria such as Streptococcus pneumonia and Haemophilus influenza. Now we are going to read about the pathogenesis of central nervous system involvement. So we know that basically in the central nervous system, the HIV is predominantly infecting the microglial cells, okay. And if you remember, the microglial cells are nothing but they are a class of macrophages only. So the HIV is carried to the brain via the infected monocytes, as we have already read. Therefore, the HIV isolates from the brain, they are mostly emtropic, okay. That is, mostly they are emtropic. And remember, the neurons, they are not infected by the HIV, and the extent of neurological changes is often less than might be expected from the severity of the neurological symptoms, okay. So what they are trying to say, they're trying to say that the neurology, the patients, okay, the neurological deficits that is manifested by the patient is quite severe as compared to the neuropathological changes that we see inside the brain. And the neurological deficits is basically caused indirectly, okay, by the viral products as well as the cytokines which are released by the infected microglial cells, okay. These are responsible for the neurological deficits in HIV. Now remember, there is also a role of nitric oxide which is produced in the neuronal cells by the GP41, as well as direct neuronal damage by soluble HIV GP120 has been postulated. So both the glycoproteins GP41 and GP120 is implicated in the pathogenesis of CNS involvement in HIV. Okay, now we are going to read about the natural history of HIV infection. So the virus is typically entering the body through the mucosal epithelia and can lead to three basic syndromes, okay, in steps. Firstly, we are having the acute retroviral syndrome. Secondly, we will have a middle chronic phase, also called as the phase of clinical latency, that is the asymptomatic phase. that is followed by the clinically apparent AIDS, that is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. We are going to see each one of them in details. First, we are going to read about the acute retroviral syndrome. So what happens in the acute retroviral syndrome? So there is an acute infection which is characterized by infection of the CD4 plus T cells in the mucosal lymphoid tissues and death of many of these infected cells. Since the mucosal cells, they are the largest reservoir of the memory T cells in the body, and the memory T cells are also susceptible to infection. Therefore, it leads to significant depletion of these memory T cells early in the course of disease. Now remember, the mucosal infection is always associated with the damage to the epithelium. Therefore, the HIV infection can cross the epithelia. Okay, so from the mucosa, the infection, okay, it is followed by the dendritic cells, okay, binds to the HIV at the level of the epithelia, and then they travel to the lymph node and they present this HIV, okay, to the CD4 plus T cells via the direct cell to cell contact. Now what will happen that now, because of the dendritic cells, okay, as we read earlier, they are going to infect the CD4 plus T cells, and that is going to lead to the viral replication and further infection of other cells inside the lymphoid tissue, and within days the viral replication can be detected in the lymph nodes. From the lymph node, this virus is going to travel to the blood, leading to viremia. Okay, there is an increased viral load inside the patient's blood, that is followed by the virus dissemination throughout the body, including the macrophages and the dendritic cells. Okay, now as the HIV infection is spreading, the individual mounts antiviral, humoral as well as cell mediated immune responses, and that is going to lead to seroconversion in 3 to 7 weeks. Okay, so you can find seroconversion, that is antibodies against HIV, you will get in 3 to 7 weeks of exposure to the virus. That is going to lead to development of viral specific CD8 plus cytotoxic T cells. Now it is detected at a time when the viral titer begins to fall. So CD8 plus T cells will be detected when the viral levels or the viral RNA will fall, and these are most likely responsible for the early containment of infection. Okay, so that will cause the partial control of HIV infection. Okay, and the viremia will now come down, will be reduced at 12 weeks after the primary exposure to the virus. So remember one thing, the seroconversion is taking place at 3 to 7 weeks and the viral titer falls at around 12 weeks. Okay, and at the time that the viral titer starts to fall, there is a predominance of the CD8 plus cytotoxic T cells. So the CD8 plus CTLs, they are the lymphocytes which are responsible for early containment of infection. Okay, now what is acute retroviral syndrome? Now acute retroviral syndrome, it develops in 40 to 90% of the individuals who acquire a primary infection with HIV. It typically occurs around 3 to 6 weeks after the infection, and it resolves spontaneously in 2 to 4 weeks. It is characterized by very non-specific symptoms. Flu-like symptoms will be there, like sore throat, myalgias, fever, weight loss, fatigue, rash, diarrhea, vomiting. Now remember that the level of HIV-1 RNA in the blood, that is the viral load, is a useful marker of HIV disease progression, and it is of clinical value in management of people with HIV infection. So viral RNA, it is a important indicator for HIV disease progression. But you have to remember one thing, the most reliable short-term indicator of the disease progression is the blood CD4 plus T cell count, because on the basis of this count only we are going to start the antiretroviral therapy. Remember, the viral load at the end of the acute phase, okay, it reflects equilibrium which is reached between the viral replication and the host response. Okay, and this equilibrium is called as the viral set point, that is the steady state viremia. It is the predictor of rate of decline of the CD4 plus T cell, therefore a predictor of progression of HIV. Okay, so there are many indicators for the progression of HIV, but the most important one is the blood CD4 plus T cell count. Now the Center for Disease Control, that is the CDC, it has a stratified HIV infection into 3 basic categories based on the CD4 plus T cell count, and they have divided them into many clinical categories. So there are 3 important clinical categories, that is A, B and C, and this clinical category, that is A is divided further into A1, A2 and A3 depending on the CD4 plus T count. So for example, clinical category A, okay, they can be A1. For example, if the CD4 plus T cell count is more than 500, then there it is A1. If it is between 200 to 400, it is A2. If it is less than 200, it is A3. Similarly, the clinical category B can be divided into B1, B2 and B3, and similarly the category C can also be subdivided. Okay, so what are these clinical categories? So the category A stands for asymptomatic or acute primary infection of HIV or persistent generalized lymphadenopathy. Category number B is symptomatic, which is not falling under A or C condition, and category number C is AIDS indicator condition, when the person is developing sign symptoms of AIDS, like they are having opportunistic infections, neurological disease and tumor. Okay, and as we have seen before, A can be divided into A1, A2, A3, B can be divided into B1, B2, B3, and C has no such division. So just this is the CDC way of stratifying HIV infection. Now we are going to go into the chronic stage, that is also called as the stage of clinical latency. So what is happening over here? Remember, in this phase, the lymph nodes and the spleen are the sites of HIV infection and cell destruction. There is very few clinical features, which is also known as the clinical latency period. Remember, the peripheral blood T cells, they do not harbor the virus, but the destruction of the CD4 plus T cells in the lymph node continues during this phase. So in the acute retroviral syndrome case, we saw that the viremia was there, that is the peripheral T cells, okay, in the circulation they were containing the virus, but over here you will not see them. You will see that the HIV infection and the destruction of T cells is taking place inside the lymph nodes. Remember, therefore, the number of circulating blood CD4 plus T cells, they steadily declines. Okay, they are declining at a very steady pace, not in a very fast pace. More than 90% of the body's 10 to the power of 12 T cells, they are normally found in the lymphoid tissue, and HIV is destroying up to 1 into 10 to the power of 9 to 2 into 10 to the power of 9 CD4 plus T cells every day. So early in the course of disease, the body is able to replace the T cells very quickly. Up to 10% of the CD4 plus T cells in the lymph nodes, they may be infected at this early stage, but the frequency of the infected CD4 plus T cells in the blood may be less than 0.1% of the total circulating CD4 plus T cells. So over a period of years, remember, the slowly amplifying cycle of viral infection, T cell death and new infection leads to a steady decline in the number of CD4 plus T cells in both the lymphoid tissue as well as the circulation. So with the loss of CD4 plus T cell, the host defense will wane and the proportion of surviving CD4 plus T cells infected with HIV will increase. This is followed by an increase in HIV RNA levels as well. So clinically, they can be asymptomatic patients mostly, but they can have opportunistic infection later on in the course of disease. So one very important thing I will just repeat about the chronic phase is that the patient is usually asymptomatic. And you have to understand one important thing, that over here the spleen and the lymph nodes are the sites of viral replication, and remember that the viral infection, okay, or the viremia is very less, that is the CD4 plus T cell infected T cells, they are very less inside the circulation, but these cells are more widely infected inside the spleen and the lymph nodes. And remember, slowly and steadily the virus inside the virus infected T cells inside the spleen and lymph nodes are getting destroyed, and slowly and steadily the level of T cell, the CD4 plus T cell count is going to come down, okay, and after a period of time there will be opportunistic infection. So the opportunistic infections in the chronic phase is characterized by oral thrush, that is candidiasis, viral candidiasis, herpes zoster infection as well as tuberculosis. So how does the HIV escape the immune system? Because there is a destruction of the CD4 plus T cell. Again, there is antigenic variation and down regulation of class 1 MHC. Okay, so there is no recognition by the CD8 plus T cell, and there is a co-receptor switch. Now what is the co-receptor switch? Now the HIV virus is now able to use both the chemokine receptors, that is the CXCR4 as well as the CCR5, or both is used as a co-receptor to enter the CD4 plus cells. Remember, this co-receptor switch is associated with a rapid decline of the CD4 plus T cell count. Okay, now we are going to see the last leg of today's lecture, that is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So what is the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome? It is the final phase of HIV, okay, and it is characterized by a breakdown of the host defense, dramatic increase in the viral load, and severe life-threatening clinical disease. Now, all the typical clinical feature, if you see, is a long-lasting fever lasting more than a month, fatigue, weight loss, diarrhea, as well as generalized lymphadenopathy. Now, this is followed by serious opportunistic infections, secondary neoplasms, and clinical neurological disease. Now, as discussed previously, we are having rapid progresses, okay, where the clinical chronic phase is just for 2 to 3 years. Long-term non-progressors where the viral RNA level is less than 500 per ml, and elite controllers where the viral RNA is between 50 to 70 per ml. So remember, the patients who are falling in the group 2 and 3, that is the long-term non-progressors as well as the elite controllers. Okay, so why are they asymptomatic for such a long period? Because a very high level of HIV specific CD4 plus and CD8 plus T cell response is there. Plus they have inheritance of particular HLA allele, which is providing them with such powers, okay, that they can mount an immune response against them for a very long time. Okay, now what are the clinical features? If you see, clinically, typically the patient with AIDS presents with fever, weight loss, diarrhea, generalized lymphadenopathy, multiple opportunistic infections, neurological disease, and secondary neoplasm. So with this, we have ended the part 2 of HIV. Hope you have enjoyed this lecture, and if you have any doubts, okay, please do comment in the section. Please do share with those in need, and please do subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.